Hey guys, thanks a lot. We're going to take a look at a quick grammar class here for the passive voice in English. Why do you need to learn the passive voice in English? Well, it's a very important tense, especially in terms of how you express yourself. You want to have good communication skills when you speak. In a work environment, you want to write professional emails. You don't want to make mistakes, these type of mistakes when you're writing emails, composing emails, or when you're talking, right? So the passive voice is a very important English tense. I like to tell people that it's great when you are reporting on things, when you need to provide a report on something, on events, and in which the action is what we are focusing on. When you want to focus on the action and you don't want to focus on the subject mentioned. So the passive voice is great for this. You're going to, first of all, focus on the action performed. Secondly, you're not going to focus or you're not going to mention the person doing the action because it's not important, it's irrelevant, or everybody understands who you're talking about. So it's understood, it's understood who's performing the action. So basically what you're going to have is this structure. These are the main constituents that we're going to use. We're going to have the verb be. This is very important. You're going to use the verb be and a past participle form of the verb. That's the main structure that we're going to use. For the simple form, you're going to use it like this. You're going to use the be form. So I just put it here separated. I put the simple form and the continuous form separated. And we have both the simple form, the simple present form, the simple past form. In the continuous form, we have the simple present form and past form of the continuous structure. So let's begin with the simple structure. In terms of the simple structure, you're going to have the be form. Here we have the present tense, am, is, are, plus the past participle. Or if you're going to express this in the simple past, you're going to have was and were, plus the past participle. In the continuous form, you're going to start again with the be verb, right? But the be verb is going to look a little bit different since we'll be using the being form of the verb to be. So you're going to say am being, is being, are being in the present, and in the past, you're going to say was being, were being, plus the past participle. Let's take a look at some examples for you guys to better see this, okay? So here's an example. The email was written last week. The email was written last week. This is the simple form of the past tense. We have the verb to be here, the verb be in the past tense, and the past participle of the verb write, because we have write, wrote, written. So you're going to use that form. So we have write, wrote, and written, right? So you're not going to use the base form. You're not going to use the simple past. You're going to use the participle. So you're going to use this form of the verb. This is the past participle. So that's why we got it here. So the email was written last week, right? We're not mentioning the person. Probably it's obvious to us that we know who performed this action, right? Maybe everybody understands that it was a specific person that was in charge of this. So it's not necessary to report who wrote the email. But if you have to report who wrote the email, who performed the action of writing the email, then by all means you can mention that person by using the preposition by to mention who performed or who wrote the email in this example. So let's say the email was written last week by our friend Rachel. Okay, so we just added that extra piece of information, which is really not necessary. But if you need to report who performed the action, we can simply do that by using by and mentioning the person. Here's another example. Roughly 1,000 calls are being taken every day. Roughly, which is approximately 1,000 calls are being taken every day. This is a continuous action that's going on in the present. This is happening in the present. This action of taking calls is occurring in the present. It's progressing in the present. Therefore, I'm using the form of the verb be here, which is the verb be in the plural sense here, and the being form of the verb to be. So this is important. So the verb be is basically going to be these two over here. This is the verb be. Okay? Are being, followed by the past participle form of the verb. In this example, taken. Taken. So are being taken. This is the action that we're focusing on. We're not mentioning, if we're talking about call centers, it's obvious, it's pretty obvious that we know who is taking the calls, right? But if we need to mention who is taking the calls, if we really need to mention that, then we are going to use the preposition by, and we're going to mention who is taking the calls. So let's say by agents. So here we're mentioning that piece of information. It's not necessary. It's already understood that we're talking about call centers. All packages are delivered to the front door. Okay. All packages are delivered to the front door. This is simple present, right? The action that we're talking about is in the simple present, are delivered. Here we're using the verb be form again, and the participle form of this regular verb, delivered. Remember that with regular verbs, their past form is formed by adding ed to the ending, so it's delivered. And the participle form will be the same with regular verbs. The participle forms are the same. So this would be, let's say, past, and this would be our past participle form. So with regular verbs, it's quite easy because, you know, the participle form will always be the same as the past tense. So that's what we got it here. Are delivered. Just make sure to pronounce it correctly. So all packages are delivered to the front door. I think it's obvious, right? It's obvious that we don't need to mention who's performing the action, but if we need to, we could say all packages are delivered to the front door by the delivery person. So if we need to mention, agents were being given feedback. Agents were being given feedback. This is past. This was occurring a period of time in the past. It was going on for a period of time in the past. This action over here, were being, is going to be my be form, the continuous form of the verb to be, and the past participle of the verb give is given. Give, gave, given, right? So agents were being given feedback. Now, if we do need to mention it, to mention who is performing this action, I mean, it's not necessary if we know who we're talking about, but if people don't know who we're talking about and it's necessary for them to understand for the purpose of context, then we could say, yeah, it was given by the supervisor, for example. Okay, so we could mention that extra piece of information. Next example, customers aren't charged for shipping. Customers aren't charged for shipping. Here we got the negative tense. We just changed the negative forms, am not, isn't, aren't, wasn't, or weren't, to express the idea in the past, in the negative passive. So here we're going to have negative be. Again, we have the regular verb with an ed ending, charged, and that would be the negative form expressed here, aren't charged for shipping. Another example, I am paid every fortnight, right? So I am paid every fortnight. Here we got a present tense example with the verb, simple example of the verb be, am, and the participle of the verb pay, which is pay, paid, paid. Here we're using paid. Okay, every fortnight. Every fortnight means every 15 days. Do we need to mention who is paying? If you need to, you can use by and mention who is paying. So I'm paid every fortnight by the company. Okay, if you want to mention that, you can go ahead and do that with the preposition by. And finally, I wasn't allowed to speak Spanish. I wasn't allowed to speak Spanish when I was working as a CSR. I wasn't allowed to speak Spanish back in the day. So here we have the negative form of the past, of the simple past, which is wasn't. Allowed, we're using the past participle form of the verb allow. I wasn't allowed, right? That's the action I was focusing on over here, but I'm not mentioning who didn't allow me to speak Spanish. It's, if we're talking about work at a call center, it's obvious that we're talking about by the company or by the line of business. So that piece of information is not relevant to understanding what we're talking about, okay? So there you have some examples on how to use the passive. So you're gonna use the form of the verb be plus the past participle. In the simple form, am, is, are, plus the participle. In the past tense, was, were, plus the participle. And you can also express this in the negative by just changing the verb be to the negative. Over there, in the continuous form, we're going to have am, is, are, plus being, plus the past participle. In the past tense, was, were, plus being, plus the past participle. So the only key is this, don't forget to use the being in order to avoid mistakes, okay? So remember, the uses are, we're focusing on the action performed, are taken, are delivered, were being given, right? And we're not focusing on the subject. We're not mentioning here, knowing the subject is not important, but if you wish to mention it for purposes of context, then you can use the preposition by and mention the person or thing, okay? Now let's read an email where we're actually using these examples, and then you guys will have a little practice section where you need to order or unscramble the sentences in these tenses, all right? Let's take a look at the email.
Awesome. So let's take a look at the example that I got here for you. Here's an email. It's an email about a training update. All right. So it needs to be written in, let's say, informal. Yeah, for formal language, the passive voice is great for reporting. So I'm going to read this email for you guys, and then I'll ask a team member to help me. So here at the top, can you guys see that? Let's read the email. So we see a practical use here. So the email starts by saying, "Hi, Ivy. I just wanted to give you an update about the new hires. Please find enclosed the details below. The new agents were provided with headsets by HR. The new agents were given their badges by Wilma from HR. All the contracts were signed and sent to HR. Feedback is provided constantly by Miguel and myself. In addition, I'm pleased to report that all our training objectives were achieved successfully for the week. The new agents are motivated and ready to move on to the next phase of their training. I look forward to touching base with you on Friday as scheduled. Best regards, Rachel O, training supervisor." Okay. So in this example, you can see that the bullet points are used. I mean, the passive voice is here with used with the bullet points, and it's perfect for reporting on something, on reporting on actions or steps taken. So Rachel here is using the passive to report on the steps taken for her training. Okay. So let's see over here. All right, Luis, could you help me read the email? Thank you.
Supervisor.
Great reading. Thank you so much. Great reading. Okay. This one over here, can you say enclosed? Enclosed.
Enclosed.
Perfect. I mean, I really like the way that you have those ED endings down, Luis. Perfect. Thank you for that. Okay, guys. So there you saw a practical use of the passive here. Were provided, were given, were signed, right? Feedback is provided. So, you know, in her email, she decided to, to say who performed the action. So here we have by HR or by Wilma. I mean, maybe next time she's talking to her boss, so she doesn't really need to say this, right? So she doesn't really need to mention this unless it's necessary for the context for the boss to understand. But to mention who performed the action, I mean, it's obvious to her boss if the boss is very aware of the whole training process, but maybe the boss is not that aware. So the update needs to have that piece of information so her boss understands who performed the action. Okay, very well. So I think that you guys are already getting it. We use the passive to focus on the action itself or on the thing the action affects. So here you have some more examples of that. Let's see. Angie, can you help us read the examples, please?
They're about
Thank you.
Fortnightly.
That's right. You pick up on the sounds very quickly. Okay. And for the simple past, you're going to use the subject followed by the past form of the verb to be, either in the affirmative or negative form, plus the past participle. Here you got some examples for you guys to check out. Let's see. So it says here, the order was delivered on June 21st. The package was shipped last week. The agents weren't given their training badges. Right. In regard to the uses, one of the uses, the passive, we use the passive is to focus on the actions and not on the person who performed the action when it's not necessary to mention that person or performer of the action. So you can see all these examples. I mean, it's obvious that we're not going to mention who performed the actions because it's pretty obvious to the reader or to the listener that who performed the action, right? So let's have Javi, can you help us read these examples? Thank you.
Okay, the bill was paid on
You
time.
don't need to mention this. The bill was paid obviously by the customer, right? If you need to mention that piece of information, then use the preposition by, and you can report who performed that specific action. But the purpose of the passive voice is not to do that. We just want to focus on the action. Just touching base again with the preposition by, use the preposition by to mention who performed or did the action. By goes at the end of the sentence. Here you have some other examples here. Let's see. Carlos, can you help us read these examples? Thank you.
Yeah, of course.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you, Carlos. So here we mentioned the performer, right? Although it's not necessary to do that. But if you need to for context, purposes of context, then by all means, go ahead and do it. Okay, so common mistakes, grammar police, watch out. Stop, this is the grammar police. You got to watch out for that. Common mistakes that we find when using the passive, missing verb be, right? We forget to put the verb be, or we use the incorrect form of the main verb of the sentence. So let's take a look at some mistakes over here down below. The email written by Rachel yesterday. So here, what's the mistake? We forgot the be verb, right? Feedback was give by Miguel. The mistake here was the incorrect participle form of give. Next mistake, employees is paid fortnightly. So here the mistake is the plural form of the verb to be. It should be employees are. Okay, so that would be a mistake, common mistake. And the package was delivery on Monday. So again, incorrect form of the participle. It should be delivered. Correct forms. The email was written by Rachel yesterday. Feedback was given by Miguel. Employees are paid fortnightly. And the package was delivered on Monday. So there you go. So let's just avoid those two common mistakes. Number one, incorrect use of the verb to be. Number two, incorrect participle form. So let's not forget those mistakes so you guys avoid them, okay? All right, so now let's move on to some practice. Does anybody have any questions at this point? Any questions so far?
No.
No good.
All right, awesome, awesome. You guys learn fast. I like that about you. So now you're going to do a little practice section that I have for you guys. You're going to unscramble some sentences. You're going to put them in the correct order for the passive forms that I've been speaking about. Send me your screenshot, and then we'll wrap it up with a little speaking practice, okay? So let's see. I'll give you an example, demonstrating. You guys do it later. You do it right now. So let's see. What would be the first part here? Team, our logistics package tracked the way that was by. So what would be the correct order? What would be the correct order here? Okay, I'll give you a start. The package was tracked. Good.
By our logistics team.
Ah, you got it. By our logistics team. Awesome. Okay, so you guys go ahead and work on that. Let's just resolve this activity for good measure. What did you guys get for this one over here? So what would be the correct form here?
The
So what was it?
order wasn't sent through UPS.
Gotcha. The order wasn't sent through UPS. Perfect. Next one.
The Mona Lisa was painted by Da
Mhm.
Vinci.
Was painted by Da Vinci. Very good, Kathy. Of course. Next one.
The contracts were
Were
signed.
signed.
That's right. They were not synced. Thank goodness you didn't say sing. Okay. Next one.
The message
The message
was
was
read.
read
read
exactly
by the team.
by the team. That pronunciation changes there, right? Next one.
Agents
Agents
are being
coached. Perfect, Luis. Next one.
customers
Customers
are
are
being
served by CSRs. Perfect. Next one.
they weren't giving feedback.
Exactly. They weren't given feedback. It's not important to mention who. Next one.
My system is being updated.
Exactly. Is being updated. Perfect. Mr. Customer, I'm navigating through the system. Bear with me, please. My system is being updated. Next one, number 10.
They are being hired for the new position.
Exactly. Thank you, Angie. They are being hired for the new position. That's it. Amazing, guys. Perfect. Okay, great. So now that we got the word order down in the grammar, let's see if can you guys use it in speaking form. So in this activity, just have a chit chat. The questions are, you can have a group chit chat here. So the questions are, let's see. Angie, would you mind reading the questions here? This morning, Luis, what are you taking away from this session on the passive voice?
All the grammar.
Yeah.
It's very interesting, the grammar, because I
Okay.
didn't know about that.
Okay. Awesome. Perfect. Thank you. What about you, Kathy? What are you taking away from this session?
I'm taking away more grammar in maybe better use with by.
Okay. The better use of the preposition by.
Yeah.
How do you use it?
For example, use by the customers or by CSRs.
Exactly. When you want to mention the person who performed the action, right?
Yeah.
Okay. Very good. That's it. So that's it, guys. Thanks a lot for sharing your takeaways. I think we had a great little mini session here on this. On